Good afternoon, welcome to Business This Week on ITV. I am Blessing AG. Now today we'll be looking at economic indicators as well as the projection for 2023, talking about budget estimate for 2023 and the huge deficit of about 11 trillion naira. All of this we'll discuss after a roundup of business activities. Stay tuned. On Business Roundup, our first story says domestic airlines may suffer forced depletion of aircraft following the struggle of local carriers to raise enough foreign exchange to run checks and conduct comprehensive maintenance of their fleets overseas. In light of this latest development, aircraft ferried overseas will be forced to remain in various maintenance facilities until the airlines are able to source funds to pay for their repairs and subsequent return to service in Nigeria. Industry experts say that already airlines are losing seats, and this has given rise to high demand, high airfares, flight delays and cancellations as the few aircraft available are made to operate many schedules daily. They stated that the situation was made worse by the high cost of aviation fuel, which had risen to over 800 naira per litre and might hit 1,000 naira per litre any moment, unless there was an urgent intervention. The group managing director of an airline warned that airfares might continue to rise as long as the naira continues to depreciate amidst forex scarcity. Another airline operator spoke with newsmen in an interview and said the aviation industry was in dire need of urgent action to arrest the situation before things would go worse. And our next story says the federal government has reiterated its resolve and openness to more private sector collaboration as the only viable means of solving Nigerians' energy needs. The Minister for Power, Abubakar Aliyu, made this known at the 9th edition of the Nigeria Energy Conference held in Lagos. While delivering the opening address at the conference themed Affordable, Reliable and Sustainable Energy Through Collaboration, the minister, represented by the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Power, Temitope Fashidemi, harped on the need for the power sector to boost its access to energy through deeper collaborations with the private sector. The minister insisted that the task of leveraging investment opportunities in the power sector required good policies, investments, and right incentives to investors. He added that such collaborators remain essential to a sustainable energy supply. And then moving out to cooking gas, the average retail price for refilling a 12.5 kg cylinder of liquefied petroleum gas, also known as cooking gas, increased by 119.26% year-on-year to 9,899 naira 34 kobo in August 2022 compared to 4,514 naira 82 kobo in August 2021, according to data from the National Bureau of Statistics, NBS. Ebonyi State recorded the highest average retail price for the refilling of a 12.5 kg cylinder of cooking gas with 11,225 naira, followed by Cross River 10,982 naira 14 kobo and Delta State with 10,965 naira 42 kobo. On the other hand, the lowest average price was recorded in Katsina with 8,150 naira, as well as Yobe and Taraba 8,212 naira 63 kobo, 8,886 naira 30 kobo respectively, according to the Cooking Gas Watch for August 2022, which was obtained from the NBS website. The commodity rose by 0.77% on a month-to-month basis, and for refilling of 5 kg cylinder of LPG, it also increased by 101.17% year-on-year. And Cassity recorded the lowest price for 5 kg of LPG. And that's it on Business Roundup. We'll take a break and then we're back to talk business. Stay tuned. Thank you for staying tuned to Business This Week. It's time for us to talk business, and I have Emmanuel Boigwe, who's a business analyst here in the studio. Welcome, sir.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yeah.
So let's look at First of all, the unfavorable economic indicators and their effects before we look at the projection for 2023 budgets. So, one of them is Nigeria has been having rejection of its export commodity, and that has been of great concern to the country. But some of the factors that was listed as reasons why Nigerian commodities have been rejected is safety of the commodities, not meeting up to safety standards, best practices, and just the products not complying majorly with best practices. But as a country where we're asking that, and actually asking the government encourage trade, international trade, so as to bridge the gap between trade with other countries, what do you think is the problem? Why are products not meeting best practices? We have here in Nigeria standard organizations. We also have the NAFDAC that takes care of food and other commodities that fall within that category. But why do we have products exported and rejected continually?
Okay. The standards are both scientific standards, quality, packaging standard, and then storage standard. The scientific standard, for instance, I would refer to is the chemical content of some of the food items.
Okay.
Is alleged that they don't meet the international best standards, you know, for those food items. The other one is, of course, the shipment may have been having issues in packaging them, as well as, you know, storage challenges over time. But all of these put together are all things that could be handled, or that should have been handled long before now. Because this whole issue started from as far back as 2017, and now it's getting as bad as over 76% of our export.
That's
agricultural,
almost like not exporting at all.
Yes, no, it's even beyond that. The Lagos Shippers Association recorded over 82% of our agri export rejected from basically UK and, you know, Europe and even the US. So it's something we really need to have since looked into, especially wanting to diversify our economy away from oil export. You know, that's quite a challenge, really.
But if we're having this problem internationally, what does that tell of the products we consume locally? Because it's because these products are being taken outside of Nigeria that we know that they do not comply with best practices. But we consume some of the products that have been exported. There are even stories that some of the products that are exported are of better quality than the ones sold here. So what does that say of the products that we consume here?
Not much we could say here until they are tested. But basically, just like you said, most of them that are exported are, you know, done basically to meet international best standards, and yet they still don't meet, as we have discovered in the last couple of years. That speaks much to our standards organizations' check of our food quality, you know, and other issues. So it had to do basically with, let's get back to the basics and begin to see how we could do an overhaul of the quality standard of our food and other items in the country.
Okay, as part of the economic indicators that are quite unfavorable right now, besides the export rejection, we also have inflation soaring, and it is projected that by the end of the year we may close with an inflation rate of about 22.2% at the end of the year. And I'm imagining what that would mean going into a new year with that kind of inflation rates?
Basically, that shouldn't surprise anyone who is analyzing the goings on in our economy for a number of reasons. You just talked about being unable to diversify our economy. Of course, puts pressure on the exchange rate. What it means is that we have very low, foreign exchange supply for us. So besides the dollar going up as one of the reasons why we have, a surge in our local inflation, we also have drop in our capacity, to produce, and then unemployment too. So all of these are, if fall in the naira par, are all issues that seem to put pressure on, prices. So 22% is crazy, especially when you compare that to, it's been quite challenging really since the COVID. But this year's own promises it's quite disturbing.
So where do we go from here? What do? We can't keep having inflation rates rise. Having inflation rates projected at 22. For the month of August, it was around 20%. That's even alarming. What do we do about the continuous rise of inflation rates, which further depreciates the naira? Are there things that can be handled to even make it a bit easy?
Necessarily, we must look at how to strengthen naira against dollar. That's action number one. Action number two is that we must look at how to increase the engagement of our youth to be more productive, so we could look at how unemployment rate could drop as much as possible. Number three, we must be looking deliberately at import substitute, increasing our production of import substitute goods. What that means would be they are rejecting our goods, agri products exported. Turn it the other way around. Have we been able to reduce as much as possible our import of goods from other countries? So we must be looking at those. Those are basically, beside those, then of course there are other fiscal action to be taken. But these are basically direct action to be taken. Okay,
let's look at reducing imports. If we reduce import, particularly for food or food commodities that
and simultaneously increasing domestic production of import substitute goods.
We tried that we tried that with rice. At the time that the ban on rice became very effective, we saw the scarcity and the number of years it took to at least have the kind of production that we have now. If we do that for every other food that we depend on other nations for, do you think the prices of those items in the market would not even skyrocket more?
Bless you. My fear is that, or worries are that, we shouldn't use fire brigade approach to trying to better our economic indicators like we are doing now. I'll give you an example. India is doing a 25-year plan to thinking of when they will be 100 years. This is where they want to be. Their inflation rate this year by August stands at 7%, yet they are looking at getting it better. China obviously did something like that. Their inflation rate is somewhere around between 2 and 3%. This is how, yes, US and UK had a surge in their inflation rate because of US, particularly from Ukraine issues, and of course they look at the COVID-19 issues, and then of course too they also looked at a couple of wage, union pushed inflation. But for us, let's be looking at doing a long-term plan. I think that we can take a 25 years plan to reduce to better our economic indicators, but a gradual, process of, short-run process would just be to look at, for instance, yes, I know that the Nigerian export promotion, it's leading NACO and others to the UK to try to look at these mass rejection of our export. Basically, we must look at how to diversify our economy locally away from oil, especially when it is even not promising that next year will be better for our oil production. So those are some of the, so a fire brigade, in summary, a fire brigade approach won't work.
Let's visit the issue of exports rejection, the rejection of Nigerian commodities that were exported. Is it an issue of we being unable to meet the standard, or it's an issue of people wanting to cut corners? If you go to the market and you find some food items, you would also be told, even by the sellers, of how hurriedly they process some of these food items, or how what they do to them to ensure that it gets to the consumer quickly. Take, for instance, plantain. The use of some other things to ripen them very quickly. So is it that when it comes to producing for export, we do not have what it takes, or people just want to cut corners and not allow the process?
I want to disagree with not having what it takes and lean more to the fact that we need to up our game in terms of quality control or quality consciousness. Now, we are talking about international standards, just like you asked just now. The reason is because there is a standard to which they will subject our export to. And then if you don't meet basic standards, your commodity will not be accepted. Locally, are there such standards that we must meet for the commodity to come to the market? I dare say the answer is it's arguable. Reason is not all our agri products are subjected to that test. Our grocery shops don't have any prerequisites you would meet for you to operate them. So too these perishable goods you're talking about
at the open markets.
In the open market. So these are the issues. So we just must up our game on quality consciousness. We are not as quality conscious as those who want to take our export are. So that's where we should look at. Number two, we should be looking at building up capacity and partnership, international partnership. My take is, yes, much as I salute the courage, of the Nigerian Export Promotion Commission wanting to confront our trade partners in the UK and in the US, as the case may be on this visit. I think too that we should be looking at collaborating with standard organizations. There are ways they presently track down standards on agricultural products and other products. We should be looking at collaborating rather than going. What we're doing now is to beg them to please accept
the product.
Can we tweak it the other way? Why don't we look at working with the farmers from start to export? So think that approach would be.
So that the process
from
is
supervised from putting your crops in the ground to fertilizing it to weeding those at the farm, to harvesting them, to processing them, and to presenting them for export. So that process can be supervised from start to finish, so that you would be sure that the quality of the goods we are taking for export or for internal consumption meets the standards.
Okay, now before we go over to 2023 budget estimate, let's look at one last economic indicator that is unfavorable, and that's the issue of dollar scarcity. That's another issue that has been on for quite some years, and it seems to be going worse by the day. There's been reports of panic buying by manufacturers, particularly as we go close to the end of the year.
It's going to get worse. Reason is that it's a penultimate year to election, and typically there will be more pressure on the not available foreign exchange. And of course, you never would want to blame the manufacturers who would want to quickly, take advantage of the time as it's available to them. So that's just what you'll find. But I think that central bank is also not unconscious of the fact that, it's a penultimate year to every economist, every financial manager, what is sought should know all of those, indicate, those things. So I think it's unnecessary. I also think too that it's just information from sectors from circles that do not check, history of what the financial regulators would do. So it's most unfortunate that they get their information on dollar supply, dollar demand from the open market than they get from, the official sources.
Okay, now let's move on to the budget estimate. Now for 2023, the estimate is 19.76 trillion naira, which is quite huge. But what's even alarming is the deficit of 11.3 trillion. If you have a budget of almost 20 trillion and you have a deficit of 11.3, more than half.
No, that's a blessing. That's the lower range of it. It's between 11.3 trillion to 12.41 trillion.
So at least 11.3
yes, and that is
trillion deficit.
Yes, that is that range is having to do with the subsidy, the fuel subsidy that will be paid. And of course, again, the subsidy is only budgeted for the first 6 months of the year. So what that tells you that if the deficit goes 1 month beyond the planned 6 months, so the budget deficit would increase. In the last couple of years, our deficit budgeting has come to stay with us. Last year's own was 6.6 thereabout.
So it doubles.
This year's own is just that it doubles. But my worries are that from the layman's balance, if I am borrowing today to fund my eating, that's consumption, I don't have a future to look forward to. That's just my worries.